I see that Cullen has joined us on the phone. I'm going to read his intro really quick here. Cullen's vision is to share as much information as possible, which can help dissolve boundaries and barriers between our understanding of each other in order to achieve greater clarity and thus eliminate the primitive monkey chatter response of misunderstanding, which leads to separation, argument, and debate, so that we finally see the very point of view as valid when we begin to use a formula to break down the walls between commonly cherished ideas, which are usually the dogmatic result of cultural programming. If Cullen was to imagine a scenario that sums up his mission, he would liken it to sitting at the command center of a universal information hub, working the switchboard, absorbing data, and dishing it out in front of as many faces as possible. Sort of like what mainstream media does, sifting out the truth from the bullshit. Ha ha. So with that being said, let's welcome our special guest tonight, Made Manifest. Hi, Cullen.
Hey, Cullen, how are you?
Very well. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
I can hear you great, man.
All right, finally.
Yeah. Welcome to the Cosmic Awakening Show. And I was just reading, as we were waiting for you to join us, I was started reading your article posted on n5d.com, The Truth About English Phonics, Phonetics, and Etymology. And I got about halfway through. I just love it. I was trying to read it like you were, but I know that you can bring us a lot more information about etymology and what it actually means. And I was wondering, as we start out our show, though, with our listeners, could you tell us what really got you interested in starting to study etymology?
Okay. Well, I'll start out by, thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure to come on and speak to you guys and, share my path personally, how I got started into all of this. And I would like to first off start by giving a shout out and letting everyone know how I got started into this, which was through someone that I found just basically kind of like everything kind of comes to me. It just falls right into my lap. I never really have to go looking much for anything. It all just sort of gets drawn to me magnetically. But the main source for where I get most of my information from, and definitely how I started all of this, is through a website and also a YouTube channel called True Theory. That would be like conspiracy, only without the con, as opposed to conspiracy. It's True Theory. And you can find him on his YouTube channel at True Theory 3. That's TRUTH. THIRACY number 3. That's his YouTube channel. You can find that, and he's also got a blog called truetheory.blogspot.com. And he's basically like, he's the master researcher. Like, he's been doing this for over 10 years. And also other sources that are sort of linked to what he does and also, share kind of the same interests, which would be Michael Tazarian. That's Michael Tazarian, Tsarion. He also does a little bit of etymology, does a lot of esoteric and Freemasonry research and stuff like that. And of course, sort of like the godfather for, one of the first guys to come out in the open exposing all of this stuff would be Jordan Maxwell. And so he is sort of probably the most well-versed in this area of study because he's been doing it since the 60s, I believe. So again, I don't consider myself an expert in this. Honestly, I've only gone down this rabbit hole, so to speak, for probably maybe only a couple months at the most, maybe about 6 months, probably at the most, not very long at all. Honestly, I would only consider myself to be quote unquote awakened to the greater reality of all of this stuff for not even 2 years, probably about a year and a half now. But the thing is, like, when I find something that really clicks with me, it's literally, when I started getting into this information, it was like all of the dots that I had seen throughout my entire life just sort of just illuminated, and like all of a sudden the entire matrix just lit up, and I could see everything that I've noticed throughout my whole life, all the questions that I've been asking, either myself or that I've been asking everyone else, the stuff that we ask as a kid when, we're 5 years old and we go through that phase of growth, which is the why phase, which is why kids are why, and of course the parents have no. Is it all right if should I watch my language or anything? Because I really don't like doing that.
Well, isn't that what our show is about? How to watch your language? I mean, we're going to really get into the
watch your mouth, young man.
Of words anyway. So as long as your language, if the word that you're speaking is appropriate for the position that you would like to speak, then go for it. I wanted to say Jordan Maxwell is one of our N5D radio hosts' very favorite guests that he has had on N5D radio. And as far as, I just wanted to comment on, you said that, you weren't an expert, that you've only been doing this a couple of months. But really, I think a lot of things happen and unfold in our life, like you said, that kind of build up to what we're supposed to do as we, quote, awaken, unquote, and you can talk about that word when I'm done and tell us what awaken actually means. As we use it in this genre, it's actually, not a very good word to use. But yeah, Larry and I have really only been, quote, awakened, unquote, for, 2, 3, 4 years now. And I think that everything that I've done in my lifetime has led me to being on the radio right now. And so, we're newbies at the radio thing too, as our listeners might have heard me fumbling around trying to get you on Skype. But no, I think that you were probably primed for this long before this, and also you could have been a master of words, a wordsmith in another lifetime, because it really seems to be something that you easily work with.
Well, that's kind of funny because I've been wondering for a while, obviously all of our names, the names that were given by our parents, mm-hmm. Most people will start to see that it actually aligns very synchronistically with either our life path or many other things that just sort of happen throughout our lives. And it's kind of funny, I was looking at my own name being Cullen, as in you could think of that like the word cull, as in
right.
to sift through. Only I would see it as all the past tense of, as opposed to culled with an ed, it would be it has been Cullen, as in, mm-hmm. Past tense of cull with an en as opposed to an ed. And then the funny thing is my last name is Smith. So,
mm-hmm.
so obviously,
as in wordsmith.
Yeah. So it's like
I didn't even think about that. That just came out of my mouth. Just when I said wordsmith.
Exactly. Again, synchronicity is right. Well, mm-hmm. But yeah. So I mean, it's just funny, how things just literally start to, we start to see these things connect throughout, our own individual life paths. And, mm-hmm. Once something becomes prominent in your awareness, you just start seeing it everywhere, and you start seeing the connections between everything. And that's the main thing that I would consider myself to be on the path of, is connecting all things, all fields of science. And that's what syncretism is. The word syncretism comes from Greek synkretismos, meaning to connect, to join, to tie together, from the root word of syn, sin, or sign, meaning to come together. And of course, to come together would be as in the sexual act, to communicate, to come unify, unification, and the male and the female aspects, the positive and the negative. The duality of this reality is and the very language itself, words, letters, symbols, sounds, everything about this entire reality is focused in a dualistic perspective, meaning that every letter, every word, every concept holds a polarity within it, meaning the positive, the negative, the day, the night, the light, the dark, the summer, the winter, which comes with all the cycles of nature and electromagnetism, electricity, the male, electric, the phallic, and the feminine, the magnetic, the water, the cool essence. So these aspects are inherent throughout every aspect of nature, and that includes language and letters and numbers and symbols as well. So when we think to ourselves, oh, well, this word or this letter actually comes from this root meaning, or this letter or this word that's a negative word. We shouldn't use that word. Well, actually, everything holds a duality and a polarity within it. So you can see everything from your own unique perspective. We all have our own individual perspective, and everything can be viewed as either positive or negative, good versus bad, light versus dark, depending on our own unique perception. And that perception is based upon our own individual life path, all the things that we've seen, all the things that we've heard, all the things, our environment, the things we've been told by our schools, our parents, our teachers, all of these social engineer programs of this false matrix, which is what we're living in, which is what society is. It's all a social engineering to make us forget our true inherent nature, which is to just be ourselves, to just be our true full God self, and to express that fully without judgment of each other, and judgment meaning to judge of the mind, judgment of the mind, meant the Latin root meaning mind. And judge is so like for prejudice, prejudice, and just all of these terms can be, broken down. Every word, most words are all compound words, and meaning they have parent root words, which is a synthesis of root words that come together as one, as in the sexual union, to form a greater, higher understanding. And the word understanding, under, as in we stand under the tree of knowledge in order to gain a new perspective. We can see the concept from the outside looking in, and that's a different perspective. But when we stand under wisdom, which is the wise dome, as in the cap of enlightenment, as in, say, the Amanita muscaria mushroom, or the enlightenment of the mushroom, which comes from this ancient mushroom cult, which is where we also get our traditions of Santa Claus, which is the shaman. It's the Siberian shamans would wear the colors of red and white, which is the colors of the cap of the Amanita muscaria mushroom, which goes through its phases of growth stages. Goes from it has a stage where it is a flat tabletop, and it's got a round top, which is where we get the Knights of the Round Table. And then as it grows, that cap flares up like the wings of the phoenix, which is the phoenix stage of the growth of the mushroom. And then it literally becomes the shape of a chalice or a grail, and it collects the morning dew inside that cap, inside the cup of the cap of the mushroom. And that water, or the dew collecting on the inside, will start to leach that color of the cap of the mushroom, the red color, will start to leach into the water. So it looks like wine, or it looks like the blood of Christ, which is where it's the Holy Grail. And so when you drink that, you have this communion, a common union with a higher awareness, a greater awareness of reality. And I'm not condoning the use of psychedelics. Honestly, I'm a very sensitive person myself, so I don't partake in psychedelics. I mean, I have, but I don't do it myself anymore because it makes me just feel really weird. Like I lose all sense of, which is good. You want to lose, the sense of the ego, which is, your sense of control, the ability to have to control your words, your thoughts, and all of these, social programs, which get wiped clean through, this is where Terence McKenna is the master of utilizing language and etymology to describe these higher awareness, concepts of our communion with a greater reality without these cultural, programs being imposed on us through society. But so that's essentially where these, some of these terms come from. It's from much older ancient traditions, shamanistic traditions, more in line and in tune with the spirit of nature and the world soul, the anima mundi. Anima meaning, the soul, the world, and the anima mundi means the world soul. And, the word anima, on, comes from, the ancient Sumerian god An, and An is where we get words like animal and, all of these other an prefix words, which also, if we're going to get into phonics, is how things sound. It's when we're told as children, well, you can't spell it, well, sound it out. And then, over the years, we forget to do these very things that we teach our own children. We forget to sound things out. How does it sound? So we would do better to spell things how they actually sound, rather than being politically correct and all these, programs that were taught in school of, we get hooked on phonics, and, phonics comes from the word phone, which comes from the Phoenicians, which is where we get the word phony, and the phoenix, which was the symbol of the Phoenicians, and the etymology of phone means sound, means voice, means speech, vocalization. So, and of
course, Cullen,
yeah.
you were mentioning, that we forget to sound words out, forget to do the very things that we tell our own children. Do you think what happens is over a period of time, we just get so programmed by the system that, we forget to not only do that, but we just kind of start coasting on autopilot, and we just kind of we don't even really think about it to even think about sounding it out. We don't think about those things. And, we're told that as young children, but then as time goes by and, we learn how to read in the school system and we learn how to spell these words their way, we just completely forget about it. And, it seems to me like that's part of all the deception and divide too. And I'd be curious to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, what it does is the public education system, or the indoctrination system, is what it is. It's designed to separate us from, to divide us, which, like the Star of David would be the Star of Divide, meaning the male and the female that come together in union and synthesis. So it's designed to get us away from the right, separate us from our right brain creativity, the feminine, the free aspect of free thinking, of broader awareness, of abstract thinking, abstract concepts, and to put us out of balance, out of polarity, and into strictly the box of, it put us thinking inside the box. of the left brain, of the left hemisphere, which is analytical, and which is anal, which is, anal retentive, which is, very, very compulsive. It's very controlling. It has to have, it has to be very structured, very limited. It's inside the box. And of course, the box itself, for those well-versed in esoteric knowledge and symbolism, of course, the box is the cube. The cube is the cube of Saturn, which is the hex, which is the north pole of Saturn, which is the hexagon on the north pole of Saturn, which also viewed, if you view it as a three-dimensional rather than a two-dimensional symbol, it becomes, rather than the hexagon, it becomes the cube, which is where we get the black cube, which is the Kaaba stone of Mecca, which they turn around the stone counterclockwise, exactly like the North Pole of Saturn. So it's designed. All of these programs come from. It all comes from Saturn worship, which is also considered. Saturn would be the ancient Roman god Saturn, which comes from the Greek god Chronos, which is chronology, which is time, which is why Saturn is old father time. He's the keeper, the lord of time, which is the infinity symbol, which is if you link this into physics and vortex-based mathematics. In vortex-based mathematics, you have what's called the bounded infinity, which is a slanted infinity symbol, and that's the realm of time, which at the center, the intersection point of the two hemispheres, or in other words, if you want to link that to the brain, the intersection point, the 0 point that connects the two hemispheres, would be the pineal gland, which, that's the center point. It's the 0 point. When we align that with,
Can I ask you a question about that? I'm sorry to interrupt, but the pineal gland. Yeah, what are your thoughts then about the pineal gland? Do you see it as connected to Saturn as a tool that's part of our makeup, our creation, that's being used against us?
That's a good question. Honestly, I'm not exactly sure. Of course, I mean, I can speculate based on my personal research and my own perspective, and I encourage everyone else to see things through their own unique lens, through their own perspective, because that's all we have is our own perspective. We can choose to align ourselves with other people's perspectives if it resonates with us, but everyone is required to do their own thinking and their own research, and not just take someone else's word for it. But in my perspective, the pineal gland is, some people say it's the source of control. Some people, obviously say it's the seat of the soul. And so honestly, I'm not sure. I'm still on the path of, figuring, putting the pieces together to, get a bigger picture of what is going on, of, what we're involved in, how this reality functions, how we function within it, and also how we can function outside of it, rather than being bound into it, as I was saying, the bounded infinity. Because again, this goes back to vortex mathematics. You have the bounded infinity, and then you also have the 3, 6, 9 axis, which in vortex, if you look at the symbol for vortex mathematics, you have the bounded infinity with the 0 point at the center, and then you have the triangle, the pyramid, which is outside of time, which is outside of infinity, or infinity. So we could be infinite, or are we infinite, meaning inside the repeating cycle of time, the repeating cycle of incarnation. And and the very word incarnation, it has incarnate, carne, coming from meat, to prey upon, but when we reach outside of the realm of time, outside, by popping through the 0 point at the center, which is the balance, which is the key to everything in life, is balance, between the left and the right hemisphere, between the positive and the negative. Everything in reality is inherently neutral. It's the balance, it's the still point at the center that we reach through meditation, through higher forms of learning, higher forms of creating, of thinking, which is, utilizing the balance between the analytical, the practical, and the abstract, which is merging heaven and earth. It's the balance of as above, so below. It's on earth as it is in heaven. It's taking these abstract concepts of spirituality and bringing them into this life, into this reality, and making it manifest through us. God only exists because we exist. Without us, God does not exist. Without us, nothing exists. We are the source of all creation, because if we weren't here to perceive creation, how would we know that? How could we prove that it even exists? So we are the givers of life. We are the creators, because God witnesses, observes itself through us, through our eyes. God sees it. The universe observes itself through our eyes. If we aren't here to observe this universe, then it doesn't exist to begin with. It only exists because we observe it to exist. And so that's how we are the infinite creation itself. We are the co-creators of our own reality. We are essentially God, eternal, within the body, which, as Greg Braden has researched, our DNA decoded into the Hebrew alphabet. Essentially, the first sequence of codons reads God eternal within the body. The sequence of our
well,
DNA.
yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, Colin. Somebody just mentioned that in the chat room, that God is manifested in every single atom. And I wanted to go back to what you were saying a little bit about these words. It seems like, even these words all have a yin and a yang meaning to that. And N5D, I know the other night, put out an article called "Everything is Backwards." And it's true. The deception really runs deep, and there's a yin and a yang meaning meant to be put into all these words to just really confuse the hell out of us. And I agree with what you're saying. I think we just need to go within and find that true light that we are, and get past all this and all these terms and all these words. And it creates a lot of deception, even in the chat rooms and even on Facebook. People get hung up on a word. They may even agree in principle on what they're talking about, but a word will throw them off track. And so people will get hung up on this miscommunication over a word. And I just think it's really fascinating what you're saying.
Definitely. Yes. Yeah. Sorry if I kind of, go on like,
No, it's fine.
I'm a really abstract thinker. It's my astrological natal chart. My Mercury and Gemini kind of just goes all over the place. My thoughts just go from one train of thought to the next, and I get lost in my thoughts. So
that's cool.
Yeah, that is. I think it's really cool.
Yeah. I'm in the process of balancing that out. Yeah, go for it, please. I need some more input. Some people asking me questions, because that's when I come to my best realizations.
Well, I want to talk about the word God itself, because that's in the spiritual and metaphysical genre, people are really getting caught up with the word God, when actually the source or creator, all that is, the one source that created everything, that created all there is, it itself has like several names that you can call it. But the word God, if you look at that, the etymology of that is what? In backwards, it's dog.
Yeah. Well, honestly, I'm not. I'm not too. I'm not sure about that. But when you obviously do the anagram of God, it being dog, I would say
Mm-hmm.
that essentially the word itself, that word would link to Sirius, which is the dog star, the constellation,
Yep.
of Canis Major, which
Mm-hmm.
obviously gives us root words of canna, which is where we get the words like cannabis, and
Mm-hmm. So
the
the
etymology
Syrians
of
brought us pot.
mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's where we have the Dogon tribe, who is very well versed in astrophysics and in astronomy and in all of these very advanced astrological and astronomical alignments, and also in genetics, the origins of human genetics. And of course, the tribe itself is the Dogon tribe, or the dog on tribe. They're the dog on
or the
tribe.
no god tribe.
Yeah.
Dogon,
if you want to.
No god.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
No god.
Doing the anagram of it. So yeah, it's just interesting to play. Play with these words, see what other perspectives we can pick out of them, rather than having these limited archetypes. Because that's what words and language and symbols and all of these forms of communication, that's what they ultimately do, is they paint a picture of our perception. They paint our perception in order to fit the common understanding of what these words, letters, and symbols and terms mean. But when we break these down, we pick them apart, we start, just basically deconstructing it, then we don't become dogmatic. We don't become limited to a single belief system and bound into that belief system like we're bound in with chains. We're held to it like with a ball and a chain. We become free to see other people's perspectives without getting caught up and emotional about it based on our own social or cultural programming, because that's what it all comes from. We get all emotional about these concepts or concepts because we get conned into these concepts through our perception. And when we break them down, we become open, and we can then open up to what other people are saying, their perspectives, without getting all emotional about it, without going into arguing of the mind, and without going into debate. This is one of the terms that I really like to stress and break down. It's the word debate. People are always saying, well, we want to have a healthy debate. And especially when you think about it in political terms, which the very etymology of the word debate comes from the root of Old French débattre, meaning as in to beat down. The prefix of de is a downward, a decline, a degrade, of death, of decay, of all of these de downward, declining terms. The de prefix means to undo, or to degrade, to decay, to it's the degradation cycle of, it's the destruction. And so that's what it also has other connotations as well, as in, day means of, so it's not just the one etymological root. I mean, it's all connected. So de would be of, it would be, day, and so you could phonetically it's pronounced day, the same as day. But again, back to the word debate. Debate means to beat down to death. So that's why the politicians are always carrying out these endless debates, because and they're all because it's the old red versus the blue. The summer beats down the winter and the winter beats down the summer to death. That's why it's the death of the summer, and the moon beats the sun down to death when it takes over from the day. When the moon takes over from the sunlight, the moon takes over during the nighttime, and this is how where the terms, the religious terms of Satan tempts Jesus, is because Satan is aligned, is conceptualized with is linked to we think Satan, and we associate it with sin. Well, sin comes from the ancient moon god, the ancient Mesopotamian moon god of Shin, which is sin. It comes from the moon, which is why we have romance underneath the moonlight. We have sex under the moonlight because that's why sex is a sin. It's because it's under the moonlight, under the moon god's sin. And so Satan tempts Jesus, who is the Son. Jesus is the Son of God, which he's the light of this world. What's the light of this world? It's the sun. And so Satan tempts Jesus when the moon can be seen during the day. So the moon can tempt the sun, but the sun is never seen at night. So the sun doesn't tempt the moon. The moon tempts the sun. So that's the true meaning of when Satan tempts Jesus. Because again, Jesus is the Son of God, and I can break that down as well, but that's a whole story in itself. I've written articles about that, so I go into that as well. But just to summarize, that's where it's all cycles of astrotheology. All of these religious terms, they're allegories, which is a parable, and a parable comes from para. It comes from parabole. The Greek root word of para means beside, as in order to be beside something, you have to have two of them. So it's the twin pillars. You have you have a side A, and you have a side B. So that's why you have A side, and then you have B side, and then you have B side or beside. So that's why we're beside something, and that's it. So think of two pillars. Think of the twin towers standing next to each other, because that's what the twin towers are. The twin towers are an esoteric symbolism of the male and the female. They are the twin pillars in Freemasonry. They are the sun and the moon. And what happened to the twin towers? Well, they got destroyed, and now they came together as one. They unified. It's a Freemasonic ritual. It's a sex magic ritual. And I have to give my credit to True Theory, Christopher Lord at True Theory House of Wisdom, because this is where I picked up all of this information from. So this isn't, my original information. I'm just, studying what I've seen from him and from other sources. But again, so that's why it's a parable. That's because a parable is a statement that is contradictory, or contradiction, meaning contra, to counter, to oppose, and diction, meaning word, speech, discourse. So that goes back to the contradictions within every word. Has a polarity, has a positive, a negative, a dualism, and so it's again the cycles of astrotheology: day, night, sun, moon, light, dark, positive, negative, duality. Everything. When you start to look at the break down the duality, I'm not saying we have to be limited, trapped within a realm of duality, because when you're outside of that, you see everything from the neutral point, from the 0 point. So you're no longer polarized. You're no longer, so you can't be off-ended. You can't be offended any longer by what someone's perspective is during a debate. So that's why, in politics, there's the red and the blue, the Democrat and the Republican. And that's why in boxing, there's the red, the blue. And The Illuminati, of course, the old Illuminati symbolism is the red and the blue, which is why in the Matrix, you have the red pill or you have the blue pill. You have the summer and the winter. You have all of these terms. In boxing, you have the red corner versus the blue corner getting ready to beat the shit out of each other because they're in a debate. They're going to beat each other down. Exactly. They're going to beat each other down to death because they're trapped in endless debates. So we don't want to have debates. We want to be able to see things from all perspectives without being polarized into our own limited perspective. So we want to. So what that does is that's what I'm doing. I'm exposing all of these things so that we no longer have to argue with each other over our own and defend our perspective because we see things from from unlimited number of perspectives. I always catch myself from saying the word infinite because, I don't want to be infinite.
Mm-hmm.
But
well,
yeah,
so
I could go on and on.
I wanted to ask you though, Cullen, how being aware of how words are being used against us is really how we can pull ourselves away from the play and be the observer up in the balcony, as I have always talked about, watching things unfold. And very rarely do we have to get down on the stage and be a part of that. But when we do, at least we understand what's going on. So can you talk about how some words are actually being used against us in that we do and say things we say things and write things that we don't really understand what we're saying, and that also ties to the court system, how they created the maritime words. If you want to go into a move that direction a little bit, that would be great.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't like to think of the language or words being used against us. I personally don't like to think of, this is why, a lot of people that have been catching on to what I'm doing, and they're like, well, he does spell binding. Well, no, I don't do spell binding. I do unspell binding. I do
exactly.
What we're doing right now is we are discussing these concepts, meaning to undo, and cuss is a curse. So what we are doing is when we discuss something, we are undoing the curse. So that's what it's all about. Is each one of us has our own unique piece that we're bringing to a puzzle in order to get a bigger picture. So I don't like to think of things that it's being used against us. Well, it is being used against us as long as we are unaware of what's right of these things. It remains in the unconscious rather than bringing it to the light of our conscious awareness, which is shining a focused beam of attention onto it. So then we start to see it for what it actually is. So things can only rule us, and we all know this. Things can only rule us from the unconscious mind. But once we have conscious awareness of it, it no longer has control over us. It's the big, dark, shadowy figure that all of a sudden becomes a little kitten once we realize what it is. So, but the way these things are, the one way these things are being used against us is through the legal system. The legal system and through government. Govern, Latin root meaning to control, to steer a ship, as in to steer the citizenship, because we're aboard the slave ship, just like the slaves coming across the seas on the slave ship. That is what a citizenship is. We are citizens on a ship. We do not want government. We do not need government. Anyone that is still out there who considers themselves spiritually awake, you are not spiritually awake if you're still going along with a political system, if you're still caught in any type of needing a form of government or a form of legal system to basically, be your daddy, be your protector, your your ruling authority, and that's what the word God means. The word God in as far as our country, one nation under God, is not under the Creator. Our nation under God is under the government. The government is the God of this world. That is what God is.
Cullen, if I could just make a point real quick, I was going to say that's a good point too. If you have the question, am I spiritually awake? Am I on the path to awakening? Am I awakened? The question to ask yourself is simply, do I think we still need a political system? Do I think we still need a government to take care of us, to tell us what to do? Do I still think in these terms of needing a government? Do I still think in the terms of voting? And chances are, if you're still caught up in a little bit of that illusion, you've got a lot of work to do spiritually, and which we all do, I will admit. But I think that if you're still thinking in those terms at all, then you're not anywhere near where a lot of us are at this point,
Yeah, exactly. But there's nothing wrong with. That doesn't mean that we're better than anybody, or that we're further
not at all,
or more advanced, or that it doesn't mean that we look down on the people that still, they're for the most part, they're good-hearted people. We all want the same. We all want the same things out of life. We all want to be free, happy, to live our lives without anyone imposing their will on us. But we get caught in. So once we start breaking down the language, that is when our awareness starts. We start seeing the programs for what they are, which is just words. The words have been used against us in order to paint our perception, which is in order to imbue it. And imbue means to whitewash. It means to whitewash our perception, to brainwash us. We think of and the word government meaning mind control. When we hear the term mind control, that alone has its own mental, construct of what mind control is. We think of someone sitting there in a chair, with electrodes strapped to their brain, and they're, like in A Clockwork Orange, they're sitting there like getting electroshocked or whatever. That could be a form of mind control, but that's only used in underground Masonic or, satanic, pedophilia rings, which, I'm going to go there. I'm going to say that because that's what it all is.
So basically, right. We don't look down on anybody, and we all want the same thing. It's just that I think we're coming from different levels of consciousness sometimes, and we all, like you said, at the root of it all, we all want the same thing. We all want our families to be taken care of. We want what we think is best, and in our heart, we know it is best. It's just I guess it's just one of those things. But yeah, go ahead, go on. I just wanted to add that in.
Yeah. So we all want the same things out of life. But the thing is, it's what we want. The form of governance that we want is self-governance. That's what the word anarchy means. When you look up the word anarchy, it's not the mind control program of Hollywood, the wood of the holly tree, which is where Hollywood comes from, which is the ancient druidic system of black magic, which is using the magic wand, which comes from the wood of the holly tree. Thanks to Jordan Maxwell for presenting this information. And so anarchy is self-governance. It's not needing some kind of some external authority. It's not projecting an authority figure outside of us. It's not projecting an external God. It's not projecting an external savior figure, coming down to save us in the clouds, which is, also an agenda that they're trying to force on us. There is no outside savior. There's no one outside of what we need to do in our own lives, which is do our own work. Step up. Take the initiative to be a better person and to affect the change in our own lives positively in our own way, to rather than argue with people because they have a different religion or they have a different skin color or they have a different background, or they have a different, all of these prejudices or prejudices, that's what we're breaking down. We're getting past that. All of that stuff is the old age of, that's the age of Pisces, which is I believe. Oh, you have, to quote Santos Bonacci, you gotta believe in Jesus. Well, do you believe or do you know? We are now we're progressing out of that age and into the age of Aquarius, which is I know, which is I know, which is we know our own path. We know our own, we don't require some dude up on a podium telling us what has happened or telling us what to believe in. There's nothing wrong with believing as long as we're believing in what we know. We want to believe in what we know. We don't need someone else to tell us what to believe, which is what government does through especially Fox News, especially going on right now with all the distractions about other countries and other religious, this is a religious war. They're killing these people over their religion. All of those are programs. That's not the people themselves. If they're getting caught up in that, then they're buying into the program. But the people themselves all want the same thing. Well, for the most part, good people want the same thing. We want to be peaceful. We want to have our own. So once we have access to all of our own things, a little bit of land, we don't even need to own any of these things, but we just want to have, some land to be able to live on, a house or a shelter, and good food, access to good food, clean water, clean air, and all of the essentials that we need for life, But we don't need to pander to government and a court system and a legal system which uses all of these words against us to fit their own agenda. That's where the language comes in, because that's how they get us. That's how you sway someone's opinion. That is the true form of mind control. Is words. You can implant an idea into someone's mind by using words. And I'm not saying that I'm the one doing this. I mean, people can easily perceive me or someone else like me that does etymology and, goes into symbolism, someone like either me or Michael Cesarian or Jordan Maxwell, we can be painted as the bad guy because people can see things from any type of perspective, or they can see things from the other polarity. But we're the ones exposing it. With most people that are caught in these programs, they don't want to believe, or they don't even want to look for themselves into what these terms actually mean, because they've already been programmed by the words and the language itself. So that, they don't want to look into these things because they want to hold on to that illusion that they've been told their entire life by either their priests or their parents or their teachers. So that's the way that language can be used against us. But, to the court system, it all goes back to admiralty law, and which is the law of the sea, which comes from the Kina Phoenicians, because they were essentially pirates. So, they were the first pirates of the sea. They were great, very skilled sailors. And so therefore they had to be very great communicators in order to communicate with these other cultures that they were doing commerce with. So that's how they became, they used these alphabets. And honestly, I'm not an expert in this history, but, I have my own perspective from the things that I pieced together. So, I'm not an expert in knowing exactly how all this happened, but any one of us, when we start to look into it, we can start to see that indeed is what's been going on. That's how they're using control of commerce against humanity, is through the court system, which the police are the ones. Yeah, the police are the ones defending this court system, which defends the politicians, which defends the bankers at the top of it. So the people that, the good people, the good police, they don't know who they're protecting and serving. The judges, they actually might know. I mean, a lot of them, not all of them, but most of them know how this works. But they're members, they're sworn to the bar society, and same with the lawyers. So
hence everybody's caught in the illusion at a different level. Like you said, some judges may know, and a lot do. A lot probably get it, but they're caught in illusion on their level, protecting the bar, and then it just goes on up the ladder.
Yep, exactly.
Even walking into a courthouse puts you on their land, which is maritime law. Once you walk in those doors, you're basically on their land. It's like trespassing on somebody else's property. You're automatically tied into the language that they use, that they need lawyers to speak for you. You don't even have your own rights to speak because you have to use a lawyer. And then the judge, bases his or her judgment on a precedent that was, something that was put down from the prior cases. That's how they rule, is from the prior cases, which may be from 100 or 200 years ago, that don't even apply to today, rather than what's fair and just. And that's why, if we were to have any kind of government in a higher consciousness, it would be more like a council of elders who have common sense, I think, and higher consciousness awareness of what is going on, and basically be teachers rather than anything else, and be able to say, well, maybe you don't want to do this because it would cause this harm to someone else. How does that make you feel, and how would you like to repay? I mean, that would be a more common sense way to live rather than what's been set up now. And so really, how do we, being aware is the first thing, the first way that we start moving away from this system. But right now, as we're caught in this system, because there's so many people that aren't aware and aren't awake and are just blindly following, how do we get out? How do we start moving out of this?
Michelle, before Cullen says anything, I wanted to say you made a great point, and you talk about the judge looking at a previous precedent or going by a previous case and coming from that mindset. I can't think of any more mindless, irresponsible way of thinking by somebody that's put in that position. I mean, that right there is the perfect scenario. And, and if I get thinking about something like that, it kind of angers me a little bit, because they're really being mindlessly irresponsible. I mean, they may know what's right in their heart, right? And they could go ahead and make a different decision, or they could adjust the decision a little bit, but they're going to go off of a precedent, or this is how it is. It's black and white, it's red and blue, and this is how it's got to be. And I just, I wonder if people like that sleep well at night. I don't know, maybe a lot of Xanax, maybe a lot of Valium, whatever, but I just wonder, how they feel about themselves doing that.
Yeah, it's usually they know. Well, honestly, I'm not an expert in this, but most of them, some of them do know, some of them might not. But honestly, it depends how high up they are in the legal or in the court system. But that's why it's the rule of law. That's why we have the rule of law, because it rules over us. It's rather than so. I think most of this, it's an ancient Roman death cult, is what it is. It's an elite to worship to El, who is Saturn, who is the Most High of the Bible. It's the ancient Cana-Phoenician god of. So El is where we get the word Elite, elders, and so that's why they wear the black robe, which is the worship to Saturn. So they are essentially, they're the administrator, they're the priest, they're the black priest of Saturn. It's an ancient Roman who Rome conquered all of Mesopotamia, and so they adopted these, this ancient death cult is what it is. And Michael Cesarian does great work, and same with Jordan Maxwell does great work into going. If you want to go deeper into, learning all the details about this, I recommend their work. Or even Santos Bonacci has also, done some great work exposing it in detail. But so that's why we have the rule of law. And but yeah, once we step into that courtroom, we're stepping into their jurisdiction. And by consenting, the way that they set it up, this ancient pledge system, the system of pledging, and pledging is, if you look into the etymology of that that's a whole nother story in itself. But the way they do it, the way they get us all ensnared into their system is at birth. They get us at the birth, which is through the birth certificate, which is through they create a dead legal entity that we think is us because they're using, the name that our parents gave to us, but then the parents unknowingly sign that they unknowingly sign that person, they sign their children away to this ancient debt cult by signing that birth certificate, which is their ancient system of pledging. And so that's how they get us is through the identification. That's why they're advancing so prominently is they have to make sure everybody has a form of identification. And they're going to make it easier and easier. At least I'm not going to say they're going to, because we're all becoming very well aware of this stuff, and so we're all exposing it. At least I hope that everybody is going to start exposing this on a very large scale, because that's what needs to be done if we want to go back to our own form of self-governance, which is more like the ancient Greeks, which is a republic, or we need a more like a republic, which is where, like you said, it's more like a council of it's like we go and we communicate with each other. And this is how schools should be. We don't need schools where everyone sits down and has one person up at the no form of congregation should be one person up at the top speaking to large amounts of people sitting down. It should all be everyone, conversing back and forth, having a discussion. Everyone has their say. Everyone has their perspective. Everyone puts in their piece of the puzzle, and that's how we get the big picture. It's by everyone putting these pieces together, rather than one person speaking down on everybody, which is essentially what the judge does. Is they dictate, they mandate what the rule of law is. And when we get when we get stuck in what laws are just made up by the people that decide what the laws are going to be. The people the people ourselves, we do not decide the laws. The laws are decided by someone outside of us. And that is what law is, or that's what legal law is. Real law is do no harm to another person. That's common law. That's outside of this ancient Cana-Phoenician, pledging system. Real law is common law. It's the law of the land. It's the law of the living, of the flesh, blood, human being. And it's essentially the universal law, which is do no harm, which is do not impose your free will. Do not impose upon someone else's free will. So do no harm to them. Do no harm to their property. That is what anarchy is. True anarchy is peaceful self-governance. It is not needing another person. It's not needing to impose legal laws in order to get the state to enforce these laws at gunpoint, which is what. Yeah,
and look how rampant that word. Look at how much that word is used for disinformation. I mean, that word has such a stigma about it. Anarchy. You hear that word and you think panic, chaos. Right away.
Right.
Yep.
They did that with the television.
Yeah, that's the mind control right
tell
there.
Lie vision.
Yeah, tell of vision. Either tell
lie
vision or tell of vision.
Mm-hmm.
So exactly, and that comes. I mean, the most recent form of mind control for that word, anarchy, would be this new movie that either came out already or is coming. It might even still be out. The movie The Purge, And the sequel to the original movie, The Purge, this new one that just came out is called The Purge Anarchy. So, so of course, why are they putting out The Purge Anarchy? With the whole concept of it is pure mind control, just to keep people in fear of what is actually changing, which is that people are waking up to are becoming aware of true anarchy, which is self-governance, peaceful non-compliance, and not giving our power over to an external authority, to an external God, which is the state. That's the God on the dollar bill. Is in God we trust. Is the state. In the state we trust. In government we trust. That's what all of these symbols are on the dollar bill. And so and
they'll let you wake up to that a little bit too. I mean, they'll let you, people will look at that Illuminati symbol on a dollar bill or in God we trust, and they'll see those, and some people will be like, oh my God, that's the Illuminati or the cabal, and which it is. It's that kind of mindset, but at the same time, they realize that the people thinking that will never go any further past that to really look into it, to really look at how deep the deception is. So it's almost like it becomes like a pop culture thing that that means it's the Illuminati. And then you can even get into the mindset, well, those symbols are cool or whatever, but they realize that people will never expand their mind past just that symbol and go into just really how intricate, how deep, and how screwed up it really is,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Again, it'll be like the controlled opposition. So they'll let people become aware of this Illuminati thing, but they'll keep them in the fear of it.
Yes.
And of course, I personally get a lot of these people like, I'm a 33rd degree Mason, and I'm a good person, and I believe in God and all of this, and yeah, that's cool, but you still have no idea how deep to go. They think I'm a 33rd degree Mason, I'm a master. Well, no, it goes to 360 degrees. It goes full circle. It comes back all the way around. So, so even the good people that, think it's some kind of, well, the Illuminati simply means the enlightened ones. Well, you're still going along. You're still perpetuating an ancient death cult. Whether you're involved in a pedophilia ring doesn't mean that the Mason right next to you, that's a high-level judge, is not literally running a pedophile ring in his own basement, because they are. They are. And I would have thought this was crazy, when I first got started, until my personal reach started expanding to people all over the globe. And then all of a sudden I started getting into psychology and, healing and psychological healing trauma and abuse, especially sexual abuse and verbal abuse. And once I started getting into all of these things and seeing, how deep the mind control goes, which is not, strapping electrodes to someone and giving them electrodes, although they do that. But when I started getting all these women, asking me for help, all of their stories were exactly the same. They all had the exact same story, which was their boyfriend was a really rich guy, and nothing against people with a lot of money, but there's a certain type of people that were doing this thing, that were doing this type of abuse. It's a ritual type of abuse is what it was. And I just started to put these pieces together. I was like, why do all these women all have the same type of experience? They all have the same things happen to them in their life, and it all starts from childhood. Like, this is why all of these, all this corruption is going on, is because it starts at childhood. I mean, so these women would come to me and they were like, well, the first thing I would ask them was, were you abused as a child? And all of them, yes. And most of it was, a lot of it was sexual abuse. Some of it was just verbal or, even physical. But anyways, so when they come to me for help, it was their current boyfriend or their latest ex-boyfriend was either someone who was really rich, really well off, was for most of them was also pushing, cocaine or pushing hard drugs, heroin, something like that. So they were really rich. They were involved in pushing drugs. And then when I started to get deep into it, like I even asked a couple of my friends, I put out a call. I was like, hey, are there any hackers out there that can, pull up the histories of these dudes? And so I got some of the hackers to pull up their histories, and all of them were involved in masonry. And I mean, this is why I will say that, yeah, whether you consider yourself a good Freemason, you got into it for the good principles, brotherhood, humanity, all of these, these exoteric things that they sell to the people to lure in good people. The good people will never make it past the 33rd degree in masonry, because they have they have this, what's called the blue degrees and the red degrees, the red and the blue, the esoteric, which is the inner house of wisdom, and the exoteric, which is the outer mask. It's the false lies. It's the bullshit that they feed to the masses to keep them beating around the bush, which think of this esoteric and exoteric as Saturn. The inner body of Saturn itself, that's the esoteric. It's the inner house of wisdom. It's the wise dome. The inner temple, the dome of the temple, the church. That's what it's the dome of the rock.
Cullen, if I could ask you too, when these people, these good people that will say that, that they're a 33 and a third degree Mason, I mean, in and of itself saying that, but I'm a good person, they're still practicing this separation game. Just the fact that they're acknowledging, well, I guess it would depend on the tone that they're bringing it up in, but if they're just throwing it out there like that all the time, it seems to me like that they're still caught up in that illusion of separation by giving themselves a title in and of itself. You know what I mean?
Yep, exactly. Yeah. It's a form of self-entitlement, and it's a form of, and it goes back to, well, if you gotta feel like you need to belong to a cult or a club or an ideology or any form of, if you associate yourself with any group, club, what that is it's a cult. When you look up the etymology of cult, it's not one of these, it doesn't have to be associated with, something dark or something, something that we would consider evil, or that we would
That's too obvious to spot. Yeah, exactly. That's too obvious. It goes so much deeper than that.
Cult simply means following. It means any type of following. It means if you go along with any type of following. That's what a cult is. So, everything is
Cullen, can I interrupt for just a second?
Yeah, please.
Speaking of cults, I need to stop you there for just a moment. I have my favorite cult member and leader on the phone. I'd like to take a call.
Mine too, Michelle. Mine too. Is he here?
I would like to bring Greg Prescott on, and what we're doing is tonight, my wonderful co-host Larry has a function he needs to go to, and he needs to leave in about 5 minutes. So what I'd like to do is bring Greg on. Greg's going to say hi, and he has a question or a comment about what we're talking about, and I'll keep him on the show as we finish out the show here tonight. But Greg, welcome to the Cosmic Awakening Show.
Welcome, Greg. Speaking of Colts, Greg, I've got to take my son to a football meeting for his high school football team. So speaking of Colts, I'm leaving to go to a meeting of one.
Enjoy, have fun. All right. Hey, Cullen. How are you doing?
Hey, what's up, Greg? It's good to meet you, man.
Yeah, you too. And first off, I want to thank you for tagging me on your etymology video that I ended up sharing on InsidePeak.com. So thanks again for that.
You're most welcome, man. Thank you for sharing. That's what I'm all about, is, drawing connections between all groups, between all, it's cross-referencing, man. We're drawing connections between, that's what I love about your site in 5D, is because you really do include all aspects of, you're not just the love and light, you're not just that little, part of it. You're not afraid to, draw upon some of the darker stuff that we need to expose in order to become aware. It's wholeness. It's about wholeness, not about peace. It's about wholeness. We don't want to be, we don't want to be at peace. We want to be whole.
I agree.
So that's what it is, man. That's what we're doing.
Yeah, and for me, and Michelle knows, I tell her this probably every day. The most important things to me are obviously love and truth. And sometimes the truth isn't pretty, and sometimes people don't want to hear the truth. But I'm not afraid to put it out there on InsideD.com. And sometimes it's not all about love and light. And, that's what I do. And as long as it resonates with the truth and helps to bring people to a greater awareness, I might have answered my own question. That's what I'm all about. But let me get into this anyway, because Michelle and I, when we have conversations, we have a hard time coming up with certain words. Now, I'm having a hard time finding the right word for awakening, because awake is for the dead. And I could say aware, but aware is something that is bought and sold in commerce. But what word would you recommend using instead of awakening or aware?
That's a good one, man. You are right about that, but honestly, once we become conscious of what the things mean, it's all about the intent that we put behind it. It's not necessarily, sorry, my dog's barking. It's not the, it's not the thing itself that holds power. It's the intent that we put behind it. Because, like I was saying, everything holds a polarity. So it really doesn't matter, what the etymology of something is. It really ultimately is about the intent that we put behind it. Like for, if we're wishing someone well, wishing well, that's what goes into it. We're putting our heart, we're putting our energy into it. So but the thing is, again, as long as it's not from the unconscious, we're not doing it unconsciously, but we're doing it intentively. We are focusing that, and we're projecting it through our heart center and through our own torus field into the ether, what Rupert Sheldrake would call the morphogenetic field. What are we feeding each other's fields? Are we feeding something that we are doing intentionally, or are we doing it, unintentionally from the subconscious? So yeah, honestly, rather than using, there's tons of other words we can use instead, and especially that's why I recently don't like to use especially religious, based terms, like especially the one, I forget if I tagged you in this one of my recent articles about the etymology of blessing. Some of these religious terms, the etymological roots are really darker, like to bless someone, when they sneeze, we'll bless you. Well, the intent is it's a good, we're wishing them well. But the etymology comes from, the blessing is to sprinkle, is a blood offering on a pagan altar. And that comes from, it's an ancient Cana-Phoenician ritual, which is sprinkling the blood blessing on the altar of sacrifice.
It seems actually, too, to wish them well would be to infer that they're not well to begin with, just because they...
Exactly. Yes, exactly. But it's just, all of these things have polarity. They all have duality. Everything can be perceived as either good or bad, light or dark. So that's why, as long as we are aware of both aspects of it, then only then can we find the 0 point, the still point at the center, the balance between these. But if we only, are aware, or if we're only focusing on the positive aspect of it, then we're polarized. I mean, we don't want to be polarized, right? Whether it be good or bad, whether it be Christianity or Satanism, because they're both polar aspects of the same, they're both polar aspects of the same cult. They're both ancient cults. They're both they're both they're both actually sacrifice death cults. I mean, if you look into Christianity, it's based around a sacrificial victim. Whether it be some kind of positive image of it, it's still based around human blood sacrifice. He's the human blood sacrificial victim. We drink the blood and we eat the body of Christ. We receive his blessing by eating his flesh.
Isn't that kind of messed up, drinking the blood of Christ? I mean, really. When you think about it, who wants to drink anyone's blood? Isn't that vampirism?
Yeah, and they do the same exact thing in Satanism. I mean, so the Christians are afraid of Satanists. Then the Satanists hate the Christians. They're both polarized, and both of them are not realizing that they're both doing the same ancient ritual. They're both coming from the same ancient cult, the same ancient death cult. It's a Roman death cult. Same with the government. Same with all forms of government, especially the U.S. government, because the way you can tell that it's an ancient death cult is by just looking at the Congress building. In Congress, right there on both sides of the American flag, you see the symbol of the fasci. The fasci is an ancient Roman symbol. What it is it's a battle axe wrapped in a bundle of sticks. And what it symbolizes is power, dominance. It symbolizes just the brute force, the sheer brutality, the phallic male dominance, the sword of bloody Mars, of war, the god of war. And that's what the fasci symbolizes. And on either side of the American flag in Congress, look it up, you'll see the symbol of the fasci, which is why we have fascination. We are a fasci nation. That's why we have such fascination with our nation, because our nation is a fasci nation of the fasci. It's fascism. So
now, wouldn't Congress similar to regress? Almost a similar meaning to Congress would be to regress.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And most of these prefixes and also some of the suffixes, they'll have multiple meanings. Like I was talking about the DE earlier. The DE meaning to undo. Same with DIS. To dis, to undo, or to do away from, to do away with. So, but the CON, the con, it also has multiple meanings in itself. So the con usually, so it can mean to draw together. Same with SYN, to sync together. So connect. This is why we have connection, meaning to connect two things together, or to connect multiple things together. Or it can mean deceptive. I'm going to con someone. So again, there's the duality, there's the polarity within the within CON itself. So again,
that answered what I was pretty much initially asking, because I think the answer lies within itself. Now, awake can be symbolizing the dead or a funeral or something like that. It can also represent the wake of a wave as an energy. So there you have your polarity, balancing each one out. So I guess to awaken people would probably be the better of the two than to be spiritually aware or whatever, if I'm going to use either one of those sayings.
Yeah. So yeah, again, there's nothing wrong with saying these words and things like that. It's it's the lesson to be learned is within the understanding. Once as long as we're digging into these things, as long as we're we have the will to learn, we have the desire to just keep growing, keep expanding, to draw connections rather than to separate and to divide and to fragment, coming from frangier, meaning to break. So this is why we have fragmentation grenades, because they break, they explode. So we don't want to be trapped in that, which is where we are. We're currently in the explosive, using everything. All of our forms of energy are explosive. They're radiant. They are the male. They are the phallic. And I'm not referring to the patriarchy, essentially, because we actually, I mean, a lot of us are perpetuating a patriarchal type energy, but the system itself is actually a matriarchal system. I mean, it comes from the queen bee. It's a hive mentality. It's a drone mentality. The queen is the central power, while all the mindless drones are subservient to the queen. So that's matriarchy. That's Masonic. That's the May
Cullen,
queen.
can I interrupt?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I'd like to talk more about that. Greg just wanted to see if you got your question answered, and I'm going to go ahead and if you're done with that, I can go ahead and put you back on hold. Are you with us, Greg? I think you might be muted.
Did you kick Greg off?
Yeah, I muted myself. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Well, I just wanted to see if you had anything else.
No, that was it. That was my main question, because it was kind of bothering me, but I think Cullen pretty much answered it with a duality answer.
Right. I hope so, man. I told you I tend to kind of veer off track.
But that worked.
Well, the good thing
is,
Greg,
Thank you.
I can now go back to saying bless you when you sneeze, and I could go back to blessing my food, and we could go back to saying all these funny words that we're calling each other baby or whatever. And we're going to, Cullen and I are going to get into that. Yeah, we're going to get into that now. So thank you. Thank you for chiming in. Okay.
Hey,
and
thanks
Larry
for having me on.
Left us, so
thanks, Greg.
It's
right.
me and Cullen. Okay. Good night.
Bye.
We can't have Greg stay with us, or what?
Well, I think he's finishing up his article. I wanted him to stay, but I think he's finishing up his article that he posts about this time every night. And we've been playing around with this etymology thing for the last week, ever since we watched the series, the Golden Web series that we posted on several of our articles. And baby is one of them. Baby is another word that, we found ourselves catching, calling each other that. The bay and the bee part of it, like you were talking about,
the hive,
what they're trying,
the hive mentality.
Yeah, they are subliminally giving us words and phrases that make us want to move towards a hive mind mentality, and as well as the New Age movement talking about, being in oneness. And there are actually people who have been channeling others, like Barbara Marciniak, who, the Pleiadians that say that they have that they're open about their agenda. They talk about the technology of the future and how we can change the future now by not succumbing to this hive mind scenario where technology is used actually to bring our consciousness offline out of our body and into like a hive mind computer. And in the future, they have cyborgs, half human, half they're already trying to push that right now on Facebook. But this hive mind, we are one because we came from the one creator. We are aspects of the creator that were sent forth to experience. But as far as coming together as one now, it depends on, they could use that against us by they don't have the consciousness like we do. Well, they have consciousness. They don't have the higher developed mind, that the intelligence that we do. And they want to steal that from us, as well as stealing our energy, our negative energy. They want to steal our positive energy and our thoughts, and basically make us slaves for the queen.
Hmm. Well, yes. Again, it's just a hive mentality, or basically what it is it's a lower form. It's a more primitive form of consciousness, stemming from the reptilian brain, which is, I'm not referring to this as like the reptilian as in the actual animal reptile, because I'm personally not one that associates myself with reptilian entities, as in I see them as just I see it as just an archetypal figure of a form of our own projection of our own awareness or of our own level of consciousness. But what it is the hive mentality comes from the lower portion of the brain, which is the cerebellum, as opposed to the higher mind, which is the most modern portion of the human brain, which is the cerebrum, which is the neural networks responsible for cognitive thinking, for reasoning, for higher awareness, for more expansive thinking, for rather than just the lower brain, the reptilian brain, the more primitive brain is a survival. It's a survival mentality. It's emotional. It's reactive. It only responds to fight or flight, to defending itself, to having to preserve its own life. That's the ego. That's the ego. It has to defend, preserve its own existence, which isn't, it's not, we need that. We do need it. I mean, because we obviously couldn't be here if, we couldn't function in this reality without the need to preserve ourselves. But that's not that's not the only focus, the sole focus. It's not the focus of the soul. It's wholeness. It's including all of these things rather than just limiting ourselves to one aspect of it. Same with this the oneness aspect. It's having our own individualism, or our own individuality in divine duality, or in divide duality, however you want to see these things. You can break down words in any number of ways. And that's what I encourage, because the more ways you can, the famous quote by Mark Twain, a lot of these very enlightened individuals throughout history have left us the clues if we have the eyes and the ears to see them. A famous quote by Mark Twain: know how to spell a word more than one way. The more ways you can break down a word, the more understanding you can pull out of that word. And therefore, the more perspectives we can see just in one word or in one letter. Letters are symbols. A picture tells 1,000 words. So in one symbol, this is why the ancient Egyptians, technically, some people will say that we don't even know how they pronounced words. Who's to say that they even actually pronounced words? Maybe these symbols, these hieroglyphs that they wrote down, they were multidimensional forms of communication. You can draw images. You can get your own universal perspective out of just one symbol, out of one hieroglyph. So who's to say that they even needed phonetic sounds or basically verbal speech? That's what I like to perceive, is that these more ancient cultures that came from a more advanced civilization, at some point, I believe we fell into this language. We fell into written letters, and we fell into verbal communication. At a point, I feel that at a more advanced time, that we didn't need these forms of communication. We could communicate telepathically, which is...
Well, you just read my mind. I was just about to bring up that point, with the fall of Atlantis, basically whether that's a symbolism or, whether there was a really a time where we had a flood and a fall in vibrational level on the planet. that's about the time that that we did that language, or actually symbols, were first used. And like you said, the symbols that they may have, scratched on the walls may have been so multi-dimensional. They look, archaic and cavemen-like to us, but really they probably were very multi-dimensional. And before the fall of Atlantis, everybody communicated with telepathy, where you could actually feel, you could hear, you could feel and sense what somebody's feeling or wanting or whatever. And we can't even hardly imagine right now what that would be like. But imagination, truly the way that we can start working on working telepathically with each other. And, I was just about to bring up telepathy right when you said it. So that's really cool.
Of course.
I think we're working on it now.
I tend to have, I really do have that effect. Like, honestly, I will start speaking about something, and whoever it is, will be like, holy crap, I was just about, you just said what I was thinking. And this happens to me a lot. It really does. So I think I'm maybe either tuning into this type of thing, but like you were saying, it's, for me personally, I have a very emotional way of language. I communicate through emotion. But then again, I'm a triple water sign, and also a Cancerian. So of course that is very emotional, and it's very intuitive. It's very emotional, intuitive. It's empathic. So
right.
So this you're right. This is how we further advance language, because the common misunderstanding is that language is limited to words or speech, or even written words or letters or symbols. No, language is inherent to life itself. Life cannot exist without language. Life is a product of language. Language is all that there is. Language is color, smell, body movement. It's the oldest form of existence. I mean, life springs forth from language. Language is the inherent creator. Language is all there is. We come from language. We come from the divine universal mind of all that is. And all that is pure information. And all light is information, but not just light. Light comes from darkness. Light is the male spark. Light is the male spark that inseminates darkness. Light is the male seed. It's the phallic explosion within the universal womb of darkness, of the vacuum. So this is the principles of nature. This is the duality. This is the polarities of nature, of the universal creation. And it's all language, because we cannot reproduce without first having to communicate. We have to communicate in order to, and the same with all life, all animals, all organisms. The word organism, etymology, comes from orgasm. The org, it's the origin. It's the organic. They all share this. This is the etymological root of orgasm, organism, origin. It's the origins of life. Is the universal seed of creation. Is the act of sex. Sex is the force of all creation. It's the most sacred and holistic form of communication that there is. And this is why the Elites are so obsessed with sex magic. Only they pervert it. They pervert this universal knowledge into this degenerative, way that they do it. Through Disney, subliminal programming, and through all of these mass sex rituals, which they partake in, which we all partake in without knowing it. Like our own birthday, our own birthday rituals are a form of sex magic, like the balloon. The balloon is a symbol of sex. It's the symbol of the sperm. We release the balloons up into the air, and the balloon is the semen being released into the blue waters of the woman, of the womb. And we eat the cake because the cake comes from the placenta. It's the word cake is a flat, round cake, which is essentially is etymologically linked to the placenta, which is why we eat the cake, and we light the candles, which is the spark. It's the male spark, and then we blow the candles out. And same with when you get to, this is why we have the fireworks on 4th of July. We explode the male phallic explosion of the electricity, which is the male phallic generative principle, into the dark nighttime. We explode the male energy into the female sky. And this is especially, you'll see it, on New Year's Eve when they drop the ball. It slides down the fertility pole. It's the feminine, it's the feminine principle, the spear sliding down the male phallic pole. It's the Washington Monument, the phallic bull penis of the bull god El, the male bull god, the most high of the Bible. It's the phallic bull god, which is why they worship the bull penis, which is why we have the papal bull. And when you look at the picture of the Pope and George Bush holding the papal bull is literally a dried up bull's penis, because they worship the fertility of the bull god, which is the fertility penis. And I want to emphasize the most important.
It can go on and on with all that.
It can go on forever. And this one I really want to emphasize. Probably the most influential word in all of our history, in all of our culture, in all of society, is the root word of behel, Bhel, behel, which or it could be pronounced bell or baal or baal.
Interesting.
But the root word of behel means to blow, inflate, or swell, which is fertility. It comes from the bull, from the fertility of the bull. This is it. Everything that our culture and our society is based upon is ancient bull worship. It all comes from the bull. Everything comes from the bull. This is why you'll see the bull on Wall Street. These Elites, those who worship El, are all about the fertility of the bull. It's the bull's balls and the bull's penis, which the bull's balls are big and bulky and inflated. They blow, inflate, and swell, which is why we have the balloons, which we blow, inflate, and they swell, which is why all of our sports, or the sports, are a fertility ritual. All sports are fertility rituals, especially the North American sports, which is why all major sports logos show you the Illuminati color symbolism of the red and the blue. The NBA, the NHL, the NFL, all of it. And Mel V wrote a great article about this, not necessarily about the fertility of the bull. I interjected, my etymology in the comments section, but she had her own great article that she wrote about ball worship, as in ball sport culture. She broke it down about how it's a cult about the ball. Why are people so obsessed with these sports, with this ball? Like, people run around chasing a ball and they get fanatic about their team. They worship these teams like they're their gods or something. Like it's the world's largest cult. It's a ball cult. And so that's when I was like, here, you need to learn about the etymology of the ball and the fertility ritual of the ball sport. of which the sports comes from the Greek goddess Gaia, Gaia spore, which is the spore of life. It's the orgasm. It's the organism, which the goddess Gaia gave birth to the earth and the heavens and the stars, which is why from Gaia we get the word galaxy and geo, which and geometry, and which means earth measure, because Gaia is the earth goddess who gave birth to the earth and the heavens. She was also known as, and in other cultures like ancient Egypt, she was Nut, the sky goddess, who was the cow goddess, which is where the cow, the bull. She was the bull goddess, which is why we have the Milky Way galaxy. So it's all, the etymology connects all things. It connects all cultures, it connects all theologies, it connects all, and people will say, no, I get this a lot. I'll get people saying, no, the Native Americans didn't worship the bull god El, and the Buddhists, the Eastern Asian cultures didn't worship the bull god, and they didn't have bull fertility. Well, yeah, actually they did, especially the Native Americans as well. If you look at the Native American history, they have the bull horns, the buffalo horns. They wear the buffalo skins. And it all comes from astrotheology. It's all the study of the stars and the heavens and the creation of the universe. So I'm not saying it's necessarily something that we deem as, as something dark or evil or bad. It's not, because in the ultimate truth, it's all just the cycles of nature and life, and when to plant, when to sow, when to reap, and when to harvest, because we need those for life. We need to know when to plant our crops, when to harvest the crops in order to feed our families, to feed the community. So it's just about understanding the cycles of life and nature. It's not something that, although these Elites have perverted it into something that can be perceived as dark or negative, because they perverted it into, they've made it something that's perverted, something sacred. They perverted it, and they degenerated it. So just wanted to get that out. Sorry if I kind of went on about that.
No, it's very important information. It's exactly the kind of information that I wanted to get out to our listeners tonight. And we are getting towards the end of our show. So I was wondering if you wanted to tell us a little bit more about your C project before we end the show tonight.
Yeah. Well, honestly, I'm really busy right now, so I haven't been putting all of my time and energy into the Academy for Syncretics and Esoteric Etymology, or acronym C, which is
right.
Kind of I did that as a pun, as a play on words, because you have to you want to see, you have to have eyes to see and ears to hear. So Syncretics and Esoteric Etymology, it would serve one well to look up the very etymology of each one of those words. The etymology of syncretism, of which means to join, the coming together of community. Again, and the etymology of syncretism is to come together against the common enemy. And I don't think of that as, like tribes coming together against each other. I think of it allegorically from the higher perspective, which is, coming together of information against the common enemy, that enemy being ignorance, being, we come together against ignorance, against ignoring something, against hearing something and rejecting it just because, we deem it as bad or something. Because the only reason we fear something is because we don't know about it. The more we study it, the more we understand it, and then the more knowledge and wisdom we gain, and the less we fear it. We only fear the unknown. We only fear things that we don't know. But so the Academy itself, I want it to be an open source project, where because I don't, like I said, I'm not an expert. There are people that have probably been doing this their whole lives. So, they may have a lot more pieces to add to this, but especially my Facebook page. Like, this is how I got started into all of this, by just putting out what I do on my Facebook page, and it automatically draws like minds to me. Like, the information is solid, and so it draws people that also have more pieces to that puzzle. And this is something that I love, is that I put out a post, and people with more information relating to that post, they add it and they expand on it in the comment section. And then I'll go through those comments, and I'm like, oh, this is pure gold. It's exactly what, it just fits right in there. And so I'll go back and I'll edit the post and include what they added in there, and it just expands and it grows and it gets a life of its own. And, so this is what we're doing. This is what I see on a humanity level, is that this is what we're all doing as a species. We each have our own pieces of a universal puzzle that we're all putting together in order, and it just expands and it grows, and we start to see where it is that we come from, what our history is. That's what we're doing. We're putting together a puzzle of our history, his story. Or if you want to, counter that, it could be her story. So, that's why I don't necessarily like to use the word his story, because that would relate to like Christianity, which is his story. It's the story of the bull god. It's the story of the male bull god. The god is a he, which means he has a penis. Really? How can anyone prove? Well, if it's the bull god El, then yeah, he is a male god and he has a penis. But it's the bull penis. But that means he has to use it on a goddess. So that means it's not monotheism anymore. That means it's polytheism, because that means if there's a male god, there has to be a female goddess. So that's polytheism. That's not, Christianity is not monotheism. But again, so I digress. But the Academy itself is just, I want it to be, an interactive learning platform where everyone that loves learning, gaining new information, new perspective, has all, lots of pieces to put together, or just enjoy, putting together pieces to get a greater understanding. Everyone comes together and we all share our pieces, and we all add together and we all expand. And, we sit around the table, we throw our pieces on the table, and then we put the picture together from the information that we share. So whether it's on my platform or not, I encourage everyone to get involved. I encourage everyone to study, to look deeper into everything, regardless of what's your own. We all have our own special interests. We all have our own hobbies, the things that we love to do. And that is the key to changing this world for the better, is whatever it is that you love to do it, and do it fully, because that is your piece of the puzzle. And if you're withholding that piece, then we're never going to get the whole picture finished. If someone is withholding their information and their knowledge, that means that they're hiding that one piece of the puzzle that is valid in order to draw the whole picture together. So this is why no information should be taboo. No information should be hidden, should be covered up. That is the ultimate crime, in my opinion. That is the ultimate crime. That is, yeah.
Well, that is what is being done to us, is things are being hidden and covered up. And I agree. That's why we have platforms such as this radio show to bring out. We could bring out the Jordan Maxwells. We could have the Michael Tessarians, which I love so very much. But I like to bring out people like you. I like to bring out the newly awakened, the indigos, the crystals that we've been told about. Well, you're the perfect shining example of people who, just all of a sudden, bam, here they are with all of this wealth of information and this communication that we have with each other, and this interaction and this higher awareness and this higher consciousness. And that's what this is all about, is having platforms and having N5D to be able to publish people's opinions and articles. And I encourage, just like you said, I encourage everyone to keep it up. And that's why we've used Facebook, that was created as a facial recognition program against us, really, so they have information on us. Well, screw that. Mm-hmm. We've used it now for a tool for awareness. And it's a beautiful tool. And the more information we get out there, the more people that speak their truth and speak what feels right to them, the more informed people can become. And then we can begin to make informed choices and informed decisions. And so the Facebook page that you're talking about, are you talking about your Lifting the Veil page or your Made Manifest page, or both?
Well, yeah, Made Manifest is that's my personal page. My community page is called Lifting the Veil, and I didn't know that there was already a radio show called Lifting the Veil that I forget, Carrie Lee, I think, or yeah, she also has a radio show, which I had no idea at the time, but yeah, so my page and also my website called Lifting the Veil. The website itself, the URL isn't Lifting the Veil because I didn't, I'm kind of broke, so I couldn't pay for a domain name. But yeah, my website is it's okay. It's okay. It's linked to it's linked on my Facebook page. So whoever wants to go to it will find it on my Facebook page.
Okay.
But yeah, I mainly, my main resource is my Facebook page, Lifting the Veil. That's where, anyone can come and share whatever they think is relevant to get out to a large, on a larger scale. And that's where, it's in my opinion, it's one of the best communities. And it's honestly, it's one of the deepest esoteric symbolist. I cover everything. I cover 0-point technologies. I cover vortex-based mathematics, new forms of technology, new forms of science, bioarchitecture, living off grid, everything that's really advancing. I mean, I cover all of it, and all of the taboo stuff. I'm not afraid to, I'm not just going to cover the positive stuff. And it's not a fear-based page either. I don't sit there and put out, all this Alex Jones, this is what they're doing now, and you are the resistance. And all. I don't put out that shit. I'm not afraid to, but the thing is, like, I see through all of that, and everyone else that's interactive on my page is on that level as well. So, and also it's a troll-free page. Like, whoops.
Are you there? Well, it looks like we've lost Cullen for the end of the show here. And so I'd like to go ahead and finish out by saying that you can find me on my website, which is www.michellewalling.com. And I also have all of the Cosmic Awakening shows on the Cosmic Awakening Show Facebook page. And they're also on my other website, where I have all of my articles and all of the radio shows at www.cosmicstarseeds.com. Want to give a special thanks to Cullen for joining us on our show tonight. Perhaps he had a telephone problem. And I want to give also a special thanks to my galactic brother, Rockin' Larry Lockin, for being my co-host. And he had another commitment to do. And I want to thank Greg on our show tonight. That's always a pleasure. And next week's show, we're going to have an open discussion on free energy, Teslian technology. We hope to bring on one of our past guests as a call-in guest, which would be Brad Olson. And so that'll be fun. And so to end our show tonight on etymology, remember that words are swords with an extra S. Good night, everyone.